Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. The topic of this 10-minute moan is looking at the reasons why Zelensky doesn't want peace. Now that's quite a bold statement that he doesn't want peace, and it might need expanded. He doesn't want peace under the terms on offer. And that makes sense to me, because yes, he has people that are dying, etc. And listen, there might be other reasons that he doesn't want peace, because some people are suggesting that he's making a lot of money out of having a war. That may be or may not be true, but it's worth considering. But it's not the reason I believe he doesn't want peace. Now, to understand that, we need to look at what's going on and then discuss why he doesn't want that. So what's happened? Well, this war's went on for 3 years. Just recently had its 3rd anniversary. And we need to understand why the war was there in the first place. Now, again, there is different schools of thought on this. Some people think that Russia want to take over the world. Some people think they don't. And if you believe Russia wants to take over the world, then you kind of think they would have had to have looked after Ukraine a bit quicker than 3 years, because the reality is, although they took over parts of that country quite early in the war, they've not really advanced much since. So the suggestion that they want to take over the whole of Ukraine might not be the case anymore. Now, they did try to move in Kiev quite early in the war, and had a certain amount of success with that. But the reality is, there seems to be two main areas of Ukraine that they actually control today, and they have controlled in loads of parts of history. And I think you need to know that to understand or actually look and consider that they maybe don't want to take over the world. So what are they controlling, and why do they control certain areas? Well, they control an area called the Donbas, and they control an area called Crimea. Now, both these areas have been contested for a long, long time. These aren't new developments, just purely down to this war. The Donbas, for example, there are two schools of thoughts on that. The Donbas is very pro-Russia area. A lot of the people there speak Russian, they identify as Russian. And certainly 10 years ago, there was a war between Ukraine and that area where there's some pretty nasty things done to that area by the Ukrainian government of the day, because the area was anti-government at that time. They didn't like the establishment of the Ukraine, and there was thousands of people killed in that area by the Ukraine. The Donbas area is a stretch of land to the east. It goes from the coast and up the sort of Russian border. Donetsk is the sort of big main city in that area. And as I say, through generations, they have identified as Russian. So if they identify as Russian and Russians see them as part of them, you can kind of understand why that's an important area for them. Now, again, there's two schools of thoughts on how it became a Russian sympathetic area. Some people believe that it's just a generational thing, that that the people of that area have always felt Russian. And there's another school of thought that Russia planted people in that area a generation or so ago. Now, I don't know the truth of that. I'm no specialist in the politics of that specific area of Ukraine. But both could be true. There could be people there who identify as Russian and have done for centuries. There could be a few that have been moved there by Russia. So both those schools of thought could in fact be true, but it gives you a better idea. You don't need to agree with it. I certainly don't. But it gives you a better understanding of why Russia may feel, or Putin, to be more precise, may feel that part of the country is important to him. And the other part of the Ukraine that's came under control more by Russia since the war started was actually easier for them to take over, and that was Crimea. The Crimea, a lot of people think it's an island. It's actually a peninsula with a very small connection, land connection to Ukraine, and oddly enough, to the east of Crimea, a bridge connection to Russia. And Russia have had troops in that area for a long, long time. It's been almost annexed by Russia for decades, and certainly since 2014, they've had troops, etc. there. So many people would feel that that is already Russia, bar a borderline somewhere. And those are the regions that are important to Russia. And many feel that they have been Russian, all bar name, for a long time. There'll probably be some Ukrainians that don't feel the Donbas and the Crimea are even part of their country because they're different peoples and, the different languages, etc. So that's the bit we're debating over, or that's certainly one of the bits that Putin wants in his peace deal. Now, what else does Putin want in his peace deal? Because we're starting to get closer to the reasons, I believe, or the reason, one simple reason, that Zelensky doesn't want to accept peace. Now, again, when you consider that, does Zelensky not want peace? Well, unless you do believe that he's somehow become a billionaire because of the war, right? But again, you can only get to so much money and you might think you get enough. But that's certainly a school of thought, that he's making so much money out of this war that he doesn't want it to stop. But I think it's even more simplistic than that, without going into deep dives on Zelensky about, is he making a lot of money or is he not? I don't think that's what's stopping them agreeing to peace. It's the other terms that are important to Russia. And there are other things important to Russia before I go on to the Zelensky question. They have a fear of NATO. And people might struggle with that concept that Russia's got any fear at all, but this goes back to the end of my childhood, the sort of Cold War communist Russia. And there were agreements made verbally and terms given to the Russian ministers of that day. There's loads of examples there. It's an easy Google will find out that a lot of American presidents told a lot of Russian leaders that, have a word, we will not push NATO close at your border. Now, when they see NATO coming close to their border and they see the possibility that Ukraine might be joining NATO, then you can understand those fears and those concerns. And people argue, well, they never got it in any treaty or anything. Well, that is true, but they certainly had lots of assurances from America that NATO, and not only America, but primarily America, that they wouldn't be pushing NATO closer to the Russian borders. And in fact, I think the words were, we will not move an inch. Well, if Ukraine was to join, it would be right on the Russian border. And they've already sort of attracted some of the ex and old Eastern Bloc countries into, and at least being not part of, but, aided by NATO. So I can understand that. I do get that why Putin and some Russians might think, well, that's a bit scary, we don't want that. So obviously one of the other terms is that Ukraine should never join NATO. And that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still have the benefits and the protection of NATO without putting NATO troops in a border and, potentially causing conflict. But again, I don't think that's the reason that Zelensky doesn't want to buy into peace, or at least the offered peace. It is a big claim that he doesn't want peace, full stop. That's quite a crazy thought for me, because he'll see his people suffering and dying, and that, he's constantly got to refuel his troops. So I'm not saying that he doesn't want peace, full stop, but he doesn't want the peace on offer just now, and that kind of became evident at the White House meeting, where both parties had a bit of a schoolboy and a playground tiff. So eventually we can get a picture of what's going on and the sort of stuff that Russia want for them to stop this war. And, some people think it's so simplistic that, well, Russia just need to stop invading Ukraine. That's a very simplistic outlook. But when you negotiate, both parties have got to be, or feel as if they've taken something from the negotiations, or you'll never reach a settlement. That's kind of how it works. It's like any sort of negotiations. One party starts here, another party starts here, with their demands and what they want peace to look like, and they kind of meet here, and both parties give a little, and both parties win a little. So that's kind of where we need to be to stop this thing escalating. And there's this fear about World War III, and I can understand why that would exist. But if Russia was this great army, Ukraine, without any other country coming and putting their troops in the ground, should have been eliminated well within a 3-year timescale, but it's not. So that kind of tells me Russia either don't want this dominance in the world, or they can't, because you can't even defeat Ukraine standalone. But one of the things that is on the Russian list of demands, nobody's talking about. And that's dead simple. They want Zelensky removed. They don't want to, not have a president of Ukraine. But one of their terms is, and I don't know why lots of the mainstream, some of them are picking up on this, but a lot of the mainstream are not picking up on this. And one of their demands is have a new president in the Ukraine. Now, some might see that as fair, some might see that as unfair. I kind of think, yeah, it's a bit unfair. You should dictate who controls another country, but I can understand it. And that, I believe, is the real reason why Zelensky does not want peace, or at least peace as it's on the table just now. But this man's already said that he would stand down if it had, brought about peace. But he's not doing it. He certainly seems a bit resistant to do that. He's resistant to that thought, although publicly saying it's something he would do. And I believe that's why we have one man who doesn't want to get round the table to actually discuss what would inevitably be his own demise. So while the European leaders pander to this man, I don't think they should. If that's a stumbling block and the only thing that's stopping everybody getting round the table and putting the big boy pants on, then we've got to sit and nip that in the bud. Everything's got to be negotiable, because both sides, you can't have one side dictated where they get all the bad things and the other side got all the good things, because that's perceived then in their own country as white flag stuff, and no leader can have that. They've got to come back from those negotiations with something they can sell to their own nations and the rest of the world that they are credible leaders. And if this is so important to the Russians, it might mean the difference between peace and no peace. But I genuinely believe Russia's had enough of this. That won't be a nice country to live in, and the more and more people that get put to the front line and lose their lives, and I believe they're losing a lot more than the Ukrainians, then you get pressure within your country. Mothers don't want to send their sons to war. If it's over and done in 6 months, then it might be okay. This is 3 years, and people are still dying. So let's not think the Russian people are not, all supportive of this war, and Putin needs to keep his own people happy. And if it's as simple as Zelensky, negotiate some deal with the lands that's there that some people view as Russian anyway, and some people in Ukraine might not see as a big loss. And, well, we give them Crimea, already had it. We give them the Donbas, they're all Russian anyway. But our sons stop getting killed in the front line. Might not seem like a bad deal. But if one man's to lose his job as a sacrificial lamb, then we need to have a big boy talk about that. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please hit the subscribe and notification bell and give me your opinions below. But the most important thing of all, unless you're putting personality in the mix when world peace is potentially an issue, a question, then no you. But
everyone else, have a great day. Cheerio, bye now.